What is up, guys? My name is Vulkan and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be going over the top 10 easiest decks to win the 21 challenge with. Now you can win the 21 challenge with a lot of decks, like there's probably 50 plus decks or maybe even 100 that you're going to be able to actually win the challenge with. But I'm going to share I'm going to have like 35 decks kind of spread throughout this video, but I'm going to make the top 10 list for what is, in my opinion, the easiest decks to win the 21 challenge with. A lot of decks you'll find have like a higher skill cap, but these decks are just going to be like the ones that still take skill. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to be like, no deck is a walk in the park. Like, it's not easy to win 20 wins, but I am going to share the decks that'll give you, in my opinion, the best shot to win 20 wins. So the number 10 deck is going to have to be Mortar Bait. Now I think this is probably the best Mortar Bait deck in the meta, but you will find that if you're facing a lot of, like, for example, Sparky, you should stick in Zap instead of Log. If you're facing a lot of Lightning, you should stick in Rascals instead of Prince. If you're facing a lot of Pekka, you want Spear Golems. If you're not facing a lot of Pekka, you can use like Dark Goblin. And if you use Dark Goblin, you can stick in Barb Barrel because you're going to want another mini tank. Because the Spear Golems kind of acts as a mini tank. Since you stick in Dark Goblin, you don't really have that mini tank, so you want to have Barb Barrel instead. And then if you're struggling a lot against Royal Hogs, there's also this deck. This deck is really good against Royal Hogs. And if you're facing a lot of Lightning, you can use this deck because Lightning does nothing versus mini horde, so it just like destroys lightning decks. And then yeah, you can also use Rascals if you're facing a lot of Lightning because Rascals are pretty good against Lightning. But the safest Mortar deck to use is definitely this variation. You just use the other ones if like you're really struggling against a certain matchup. So coming in at number 9 is Royal Hogs. Now Royal Hogs are pretty good in the meta. They're especially better in competitive because if you ban like Baby Dragon or Fireball, they just become really strong because those are two of the best counters to it. But they also work fairly well in like grand challenges, and they will work well in the 21 challenge. So I would say I would recommend this deck. I've been seeing this a lot recently in grand challenges, and it's really good. If you ever used to play Three Musketeers, you'll probably be pretty good at this deck. But if you aren't a big Three Musketeer player, you can use this version, although I think this one is a little bit better. Coming in at number 8 is this Graveyard deck that was invented by Carter, who is a pro player for NRG. This is just really solid. It really doesn't take... It's not the hardest deck to play. I mean, you kind of just play passively, and then you counter push with a Graveyard, and that's pretty much how you play. Or if they drop a tank in the back, you can go Graveyard opposite lane. So it's really a pretty easy Graveyard deck to pick up and learn, and it's pretty good in the meta. One pro tip is that if you're versing like a Lava Hound clone deck, play your Bomb Tower like directly in the lane to stop the Lava Hound, because if you play it off to the side like where you play a cannon, then the death bomb from the Bomb Tower won't kill the Lava Pups. But if you play it directly on top of the Lava Hound, then once the Bomb Tower dies, the bomb's going to explode on the Lava Puffs and it's just going to get a lot of value. So coming in at number 7 is going to be Bridge Spam. Now I actually would put this higher on the list. I think it's like one of the top 4 decks in the meta, if not even the best. But the reason it's a little bit lower is because it takes a little bit more skill to play than like the heavier beatdown decks. So that's why it's going to be a little bit lower. I actually do think that Snowball is better than Zap in this deck. I have Zap in the picture, but Zap is really good if you're facing a lot of Sparky decks. But in general, Snowball is probably better. And then if you're struggling like versus Balloon, for example, you could always stick in Ram Rider. This variation is pretty solid too. And then also this variation, this is the old variation I used, and it also works. So if you like prefer Lumberjack over Pekka, don't be afraid to use Lumberjack. It's kind of just personal preference. So coming in at number 6 is going to be Mega Knight Ram Rider. Now I think this is one of the easiest decks to use in the game. I mean, you pretty much just defend whatever they do, and then you play Mega Knight at the bridge and counter push, or use a Mega Knight to defend and then you counter push. Like, it's not really that hard to play, which is why I'm putting it in my top 10 list. Now, if you want to use a deck that takes a little bit more skill and is probably better, you can use this version. It's harder to use, but it beats more decks. But if you want to just use a deck that's easier to use, then use this version. It's just really solid in the meta. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Pekka. Now, Pekka is really good. The reason I actually don't have it higher is because I think that Pekka is actually a pretty high skill cap deck. Maybe this version isn't as high skill cap as the old classic Minions Battle Ram version, but it's not necessarily easy to just pick up Pekka and start winning with it. So that's why I'm sticking it at number 5, even though I think it's one of the probably top 3 decks in the game right now. Coming in at number 4 is Giant Sparky. Now, Giant Sparky, it's really simple to use. Here's all you need to know. You don't make the first move. You Sparky in the back, whatever lane of what they drop, and troop in, and then you counter push with Goblin Giant at the bridge. Like, that's how you play Sparky. You play Sparky in the back, and then you counter push, and then you play Goblin Giant in the lane. Or if they attack opposite lane, you can use Goblin Giant to kite it from one lane into your Sparky lane. So it's like you always want to have your Goblin Giant and Sparky played down at the same time. And if you keep that in mind, you just play solid defense, use each of these defensive cards to defend for as little elixir as possible. It's usually pretty easy to win with Sparky. So that's why it's my number 4 pick for the 20-win challenge. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Golem. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the best version of Golem is, but I was looking at like win rates and Stats Royale, and this had the highest win rate, so I'm going to go with this variation. I mean, I don't think Golem is like actually a top 3 deck in the meta, but I think just because it's pretty easy to use, I'm putting it top 3 easiest decks to win 20-win challenge with. And I think this variation, since it's the highest win percentage, is probably the safest to use. But if you prefer Night Witch in your Golem decks, you can always go with Night Witch and Poison instead of Prince and Lightning. Or if you're struggling versus Minion Horde, that would probably be better. And then also you can use Hunter. And actually, if you use this variation, I would use Prince instead of Night Witch. It's also a pretty good variation. That's just if you're struggling versus like Minion Horde or something where that's really the only thing that Lightning isn't good against. So, yeah. And then my number 1 tip for this Golem deck is just don't make the first move. As long as you don't make the first move, it's usually not that hard to just defend whatever they do. And then once you have an elixir advantage, Golem in the back, and then try to win that way. So coming in at number 2, you guys probably guessed it, or maybe you didn't. It is Royal Giant. Now, Royal Giant Lightning is just, it's so good. It probably has the best synergy in the entire game, and it's really easy to use. But you will see that a lot of people have been countering this lately with like Lava Hound, or they've been countering it with, well, mostly just Lava Hound, to be honest. If you are losing against like Lava Hound Clone, which is a really good counter to this deck, then you can always try using this variation. I actually would probably use this variation. I prefer this variation. I just think it's really good, but it is a little bit worse against Pekka than the other variations. So if you're struggling against Pekka, use the Lightning version. If you're not struggling against Pekka, you can use this version, and it's really good. So yeah, that would be my second pick for best 20-win decks. Now, before we get into my top pick for the 20-win challenge, I'm just gonna throw some decks up on the screen. You can use all these decks. All these I think will be able to get 20 wins with. They didn't make my top 10 list. Maybe they didn't make it because they're a high skill deck. Maybe they didn't make it because they're just not quite as good. But they're all really solid decks that if you like using one of these archetypes, you will be able to win 20 wins with these decks. Now, finally, coming in at number 1 is going to be Lava Hound. Now, Lava Hound Clone, it's just like, it's so good and it's so easy to use. I actually think the guards are safer to use than Skarmy, because say you use Skarmy, if you're not good at counting elixir, or even if you are, say you use Skarmy and they like poison your Skarmy's dead. Like, it was useless. So just to be safe, I like to use guards. I think there's a little bit safer to use than the Skarmy would be. But if you want to go a little bit more risky, you can use the Skarmy variation. And if you want to go even more, a little bit weird, Barbarians also work really well. I think they actually have a higher win rate than Lumberjack, but I'm not really sure which is better. I personally have used the Lumberjack version and it's worked just fine, so that's why I'm going to say the Lumberjack version is my top 1 pick for 20-win decks in CRL Challenge. So my goal for the 20-win challenge is to see how many decks I can beat it with. Now, I'm not literally going to play all day. Like, I'm going to take a break. But I'm going to see if I can win it multiple times and make either I'm going to live stream or I'm going to make any YouTube videos. I haven't decided yet, but stay tuned to my channel because I will be coming out with 20-win gameplay, and it'll be live commentary, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. I know I'm looking forward to making it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my top 10 picks for easiest decks to win the 21 challenge, and that's gonna be it. Vulkan out.